Hello everybody, this is Paul Laski with Icon Collective. Today I want to show you guys another trick in Ableton Live, and with this trick what we're going to do is use some of Live's MIDI effects, which allow us to change the MIDI note playback in various ways to affect a synthesizer. And then what we're going to do is resample the outcome of our MIDI affected MIDI and see what happens with it. What it's going to do is going to give us a whole new MIDI track with new MIDI data on it that we can then go in and manipulate, edit, move around, and get whole new MIDI performances or new melody ideas or harmony ideas that we may have never even come up with originally. So let's get started. So in my live set over here, I have a drum pattern coming from a drum rack, and I also have just a lead sound I loaded up. I found this sound under instruments in the browser. This is one of the stock sounds, so anybody can use it. It's under operator, synth lead, and it's actually called minor to major lead. And I think it's a nice sounding, very cool sounding lead. So I'm going to close up my browser and give myself a little bit of extra room to work. And what I want to do is get my drums going. Okay, so it doesn't sound bad on its own, but let's do this. Let's add some MIDI effects to this. So first off, what I want to do, I'm going to open my browser right back up. Here I go. I'm going to go into the MIDI effects, and I want to grab a chord effect. But I'm actually going to select one of the presets for the chord effect. I'm going to grab this one called Grandiosa. And what I'm going to do is double click on it. Because I've selected this lead track, it'll pop up right on the lead track. And you see that the MIDI effects, they pop up before the instrument. The reason being is that they affect the incoming MIDI. And this particular MIDI effect, what it does is it allows me to play a single note, but then it adds up to 6 additional notes that are either pitched above or below the note that I'm playing back on the keyboard. And you can see that this is going to give me a 5-note chord. It's going to play the note that I play, and then it's going to give me 1, 2, 3, 4 additional notes that are pitched at these particular semitone intervals that are indicated by the dials here. And because this preset is actually a monophonic preset, it's set to 1 voices, it's not really going to sound like it's doing much. So let's do this. Let's grab another MIDI effect called the arpeggiator, double click on it, and you'll see that it pops up right on the track, and it popped up after the chord effect. If I wanted to, I could reorder these effects just by clicking and dragging them around. But I actually do want the chord effect to come before the arpeggiator. The reason being is that I'm going to play a single note on the keyboard. The chord effect is going to turn it into a chord, or basically play back 5 notes. And then those 5 notes are going to be arpeggiated by my arpeggiator, meaning they're going to be broken up into a sequence. So let's see what happens now when I press a key. I'm going to switch my arpeggiator rate to 16th notes, and it's set up in synced mode, so it's going to sync to my tempo, but it's going to play back a little bit faster. Also in the arpeggiator, I have a drop-down menu on the top left of the box that says Style, and this allows me to select several different playback styles, how it's going to take that chord and play it back or break it up into an arpeggio. I like this one called Thumb Up. Let's play that along with our beat. Awesome. So let's do this. Let's record in some MIDI onto the lead track. And you can see that I've just played back in a basic pattern, just playing in 1 note at a time here, and I'm holding it out so the arpeggiator grabs hold of those notes and turns them into a sequence. Let's do this. Let's just shorten up my clip quickly. I just want to get the good parts, get rid of all the extra stuff. And let's do this. Now that I've got this basic MIDI clip that's going to play back the instrument for me, and it's also going to pass the MIDI through those 2 different MIDI effects, what I'm going to do now is create a new blank MIDI track. So I can do that by pressing Shift-Command-T. So here's my new blank MIDI track, and I want to make sure that my track input-output, track in-out section is visible. And to make it visible, I want to click this I/O button here. I already had it selected, but if you're not seeing it, make sure that that button is highlighted in yellow like so. And on this MIDI track, I want to tell it to receive the MIDI from a different track. Right now it's set to all ins, and that means that any MIDI control surface that's connected to my computer right now is going to send MIDI through that track. But I want to specify that I want this to come from my lead track. So what that means is that any MIDI that's playing on this lead track is going to be passed through to this blank MIDI track. I want to set this track up to record arm, meaning that I can record the MIDI onto that track. And when this plays back my original MIDI performance, my single note performance, it's going to take that MIDI and give us the output from this lead track and put it into this blank MIDI track. And maybe we can rename this new MIDI. And let's do this. Let's just simply hit record on one of these empty clip slots. And you can see that this new MIDI clip, instead of just showing me my single note performance, it's playing back the arpeggiated patterns that have been created with the chord and the arpeggiator. Get the whole pattern in. And I can stop the playback. And now let's do this. Let me give myself a little bit more room to work. I'm going to close out my browser window. What I'm going to do now is move this MIDI clip onto my lead track. And let's go back to the lead track. I'm going to double click so I can see the devices. And let's turn off the chord effect and the arpeggiator effect. And now let's play back our newly recorded MIDI. And it sounds identical. But now we have all of the MIDI notes input. And what we can do is start to maybe use our loop brace and identify just maybe a cool section of that MIDI performance. Kind of like that. And then we can also highlight a group of notes. We can use Live's reverse and invert options on the MIDI clips to change up the patterns. I can duplicate the clip. Maybe I can take those same notes in the duplicated version and set them back the way I had them. Or do something different, I'll reverse them. So you see how by resampling MIDI notes after using MIDI effects, we can start to get brand new melody and harmony ideas that we would have never come up with originally. So it's a great way to get inspired and quickly start coming up with musical ideas. Have fun with this, and thanks for watching.